Welcome to a post-ASCO 2025 conversation between Pharma Forum and Eisai. This is web editor Nicole Raleigh, and I have with me today Dr. Corina Dutcus, Senior Vice President, Oncology Global Clinical Development Lead at Eisai. So at ASCO this year, Eisai presented data from its oncology portfolio, and we'll be touching upon some of that today. To begin with, though, Corina, and welcome, if I didn't say that to start with here with this conversation, perhaps you could provide some high-level details on Eisai's overall oncology portfolio and commitment to innovation in the field.
Thank you, Nicole. Happy to. So this year at ASCO, once again, we demonstrated our commitment to advancing oncology research across our portfolio and pipeline. And our presentations reflect our dedication to furthering our understanding of cancer biology and develop potential new drugs to the patients, but also to target unmet medical needs. And this presence and all we do is deeply rooted in our mission, which is human health care. And this mean is that everything we do every day is putting patients and their family first. And just at the high level, what HAC mission and vision means that everyone at Eisai, regardless of their job or location, has to spend at least 1% their work time in direct patient care. So basically, this helps us to understand the patient reality and apply this to our clinical trials. Now, key highlights at ASCO are, first, a testament to our long-standing commitment to hepatocellular carcinoma. We presented long-term follow-up data from LEAP-2 study. This is, and when I say follow-up, is essentially almost 5 years of follow-up for the overall survival. And as a result, we provided insights that reinforce Lenvima's monotherapy, that reinforce Lenvima's established role as one of the standard of care and important treatment option in first-line unresectable hepatocellular carcinoma. The other very important presentation and is regarding E7386, a novel oral anti-cancer drug developed by Eisai that targets CBP and beta-catenin. And essentially, we presented the data of E7386 in combination with Lenvima in endometrial carcinoma. And I will be happy to give you more details as we move on here.
Lovely. Thank you, Corina. So yes, as you say, let's break down some of that for our listeners today. So first of all, you were just explaining how lenvatinib has been re-established as a standard care, sort of successful, if you will, monotherapy. But I was wondering if you could go into further detail about that long-term follow-up you were mentioning from the LEAP-2 study, evaluating lenvatinib plus pembrolizumab, and I apologize for the pronunciation, or otherwise known as Keytruda. Can you tell us about that? That was abstract 4095 for those who were keeping abreast of the ASCO conference with abstract numbers.
Sure. So the LEAP-2 or LEAP-002 study was a phase 3 trial looking at Lenvima plus Keytruda versus Lenvima monotherapy in first-line unresectable hepatocellular carcinoma. Although the primary endpoint of overall survival and progression-free survival has not been met at the primary analysis, we have presented here at ASCO the long-term follow-up at 59 months. So this is nearly 5 years. And what we showed is that median overall survival for Lenvima monotherapy remained at 19 months, which is identical with the primary analysis. In addition, there were no new safety signals emerged. So everything we know from the two drugs has been seen, but nothing new. Now, these results are extremely important. And in addition to that, twice as many patients who remained in the follow-up in the combination arm And the long-term survival rate was approximately 20% with the combination versus 10% with Lenvima alone. So why is this important? First, because hepatocellular carcinoma remains a highly unmet medical need. There is the projection that the global incidence rate of hepatocellular carcinoma over the next 2 decades will increase by 50%. So it's very important to find new strategies and reinforce physicians' confidence. In addition to that, this long-term follow-up, like 5 years, adds value to the science in terms of continue to provide the necessary information for the prescribers to be able to make the right choice for their patients. The long-term follow-up that is consistent helps them to trust the drug and not be surprised by unexpected findings, or either from efficacy standpoint or safety standpoint. And that's why the medical community values this long-term follow-up data to understand how treatments perform over extended periods of time. So the 19-month overall survival, which is the same as reported in the earlier analysis, is definitely a key piece to reaffirming the established role that Lenvima has in first-line hepatocellular carcinoma for certain type of patients.
Thank you, Corina. So what about E7386, as you were describing, with work in the advanced endometrial carcinoma space? Can you give us a sort of more in-depth explanation about the updated dose expansion findings and the presentation itself, the trial in progress presentation of the ongoing dose optimization part of the study?
Sure. So as you mentioned, 2 presentations. First was the dose expansion cohort, where we presented data from 30 patients with advanced endometrial carcinoma who progressed after checkpoint inhibitor and chemotherapy drug. Now, in these 30 patients expansion cohort, the overall response rate for the patients was 30%. But approximately half of these patients received prior lenvatinib, so they were retreated with Lenvima in combination with E7386, which, by the way, is a CBP beta-catenin interaction inhibitor, so a Wnt pathway modulator, which is a novel mechanism of action. In addition, we are exploring the possibility of another mechanism of action via ATF4 induction. So what I also want to highlight here, and this was very well received by the people that visited the poster, was the fact that in patients who were Lenvima naive, so those patients who did not receive Lenvima prior, the response rate was 43%. And these patients had response that lasted on an average 8 months. These are all very encouraging data, especially that after chemotherapy and a checkpoint inhibitor, patients don't have many options other than chemotherapy. So this is the dose expansion trial that we presented at ASCO. In addition, we also presented a trial in progress poster where we highlighted the dose optimization part of the same study, evaluating different doses of E7386 plus Lenvima compared to Lenvima alone and treatment of physician's choice. This study is ongoing. It's recruiting very well. And basically, this study will give us the answers to the right dose of E7386, and would also will show the contribution of E7386 to establish role that Lenvima has in this tumor type. As you know, the Lenvima plus Keytruda is a standard of care option in US for patients with advanced endometrial that are either mismatch repair proficient or non-MSI high, not macrosatellite instability high, and who have disease progression following prior systemic therapy, specifically prior chemotherapy. So as you see now, we are looking at the combination with another drug, a novel drug, E7386, for patients who progressed on chemotherapy and also on the checkpoint inhibitor. And we are very much looking forward to presenting this data hopefully soon.
Thank you, Corina. Encouraging data indeed. Speaking of chemotherapy and speaking of the Lenvima plus Keytruda study that you have been, there was, I believe, also an oral presentation on data from a final analysis of a phase 3 LEAP-15 study evaluating Lenvima plus Keytruda and chemotherapy versus chemotherapy in patients with advanced metastatic gastroesophageal adenocarcinoma, otherwise known as abstract 4001, again for those who were following ASCO closely. Could you tell us more about that?
Right. So this was, yes, the final analysis of the phase 3 LEAP-15 trial that was presented and essentially provided the oncology community with comprehensive data on this very important study in first-line HER2-negative gastroesophageal adenocarcinoma. So it's important to note that at an interim analysis, Keytruda plus Lenvima plus chemotherapy demonstrated a statistically significant improvement in progression-free survival, one of the study's primary endpoints, and objective response rate, which is a secondary endpoint, compared to standard of care chemotherapy. The study continued, and now at the final analysis, it did not meet the pre-specified protocol primary endpoint of overall survival as per the protocol pre-specified statistical analysis plan. So yes, the results were not what we hoped for, but this is part of the scientific process. And this is at its core a process of learning where we build knowledge through both successes and setbacks, making every outcome valuable. So it brings a lot of information and valuable information for prescribers that treat patients with this dreadful tumor, which is the gastroesophageal adenocarcinoma. And it helps us to better understand these complex diseases. And we are happy to share what we observed in this final analysis. We are also encouraging progress in other areas of gastrointestinal cancer research, including our positive results for an interim analysis for the LEAP-12 trial in hepatocellular carcinoma, for example, which is a trial combining Lenvima plus Keytruda plus TACE, transarterial chemoembolization, in an intermediate stage hepatocellular carcinoma. And we presented data last year at ESMO where we showed a 34% reduction in the risk of progression or death.
Thank you for going into clearer details there for us, Corina. As you say, it's part of the scientific process, unfortunately, to get negative results occasionally, but best successes often come from knowing failure. So separately, and more generally in terms of the ASCO Congress this year, I was going to ask you whether you would share with listeners, in your opinion, which emerging therapy or technology was perhaps being overhyped at the Congress this year, or conversely, which was being underappreciated?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Thank you so very much for it. I've been committed my career to fighting cancer, and I'm a medical oncologist by training. So I have seen over and over situations where a drug performs very well in the lab or in early stage, and it did not translate into an approval. I also saw very, very encouraging data late. And then again, when it came to the patient care, there was a long-term follow-up data that did not reinforce what initially was seen. So because of this, I would say, I'm very married and committed to that marriage to science. And everything that I would conclude would be science-based. So I would say today it's very early to make such statements just because there is a lot of progress and there is a lot of things that are extremely exciting. And I do hope that all of them will go and translate into approved drugs for the benefit of the patients. But I also know that down the road, as more and more patients participate into trials, new data emerge, and at the end of the day, it is a benefit risk that matters. One thing that I can tell you for sure is that every time I go to ASCO or ESMO or any other oncology meetings, I see great progress for the cancer patients. Do we cure cancer? No. Did cancer become a chronic disease? No. So there is a lot of work still to do.
There is a lot of work still to do, as you say, but as you've also been saying, there's a lot of progress to be seen and a lot of excitement, and one would posit the word also hope. And I certainly like your expression, committed to the marriage to science. So my final question today, Corina, what's the most promising research from ASCO this year, and perhaps within oncology more generally than the Congress itself, that could change the oncological landscape, change practice in that field within the next 2, 3, or even 5 years' time?
Similarly, on the same page, I would say there are so many players into this arena. And obviously, there are a lot of new drugs with new mechanisms of action and more targeting. You talk about bispecifics, trispecifics, different combinations, gene therapy, a lot of excitement. But at the same time, all of these are so early, and I would say it will be purely speculative to say that this could change practice within the next 2 or 3 years. It just very much depends on the data, both efficacy and safety. So for that reason, I really feel that the team that I lead and myself are very committed to continue what we do every day and to do our very best, put our talent, our passion into fulfilling Eisai's mission and vision, that's the human health care, and to keep the reality of the patient, stay in contact, do real-world evidence data, look at the long-term follow-up, build on our learnings and on our knowledge, and also learn from success and from setbacks to do better every day.
That's a very measured and reasoned response. Thank you so much for your time today, Corina. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, Nicole. Thank you so very much.
And that concludes another episode of the Pharma Forum podcast. You can find more information about this episode, including a download link and information about previous installments at pharmaforum.com/podcasts. The Pharma Forum podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Podbean, and pretty much wherever else you download your other podcasts from. Just search for Pharma Forum and follow and hit subscribe. Of course, don't forget to visit our website itself, where you can sign up for daily and weekly news and analysis bulletins. And do follow us on Blue Sky and LinkedIn at Pharma Forum. That's all for now. Thank you for listening.